So Dejounte Murray, 4 years, $111 million guaranteed, could be worth up to as much as $120 million. I want to start with this angle on it. This is one of those deals. This is one of those deals that I think is both good for the team and I think good for the player, and that I think the player probably could have maybe gone out and sought some more money in the open market. But he also got like a very good deal to stay in Atlanta. It locks him up on security for his age, for where he's at. You know, the cap's going to go up. Maybe he's not going to hunt that, which probably costs him some in the short term. But I like the deal for both sides. I still think him and Trae didn't totally figure out how to play together, but I think Quin Snyder will fix a lot of that. I think it already kind of got a little better towards the end of last year. But I like this deal for them as something you kind of had to do if you're going to trade for him. Either got to trade him again and get some stuff back or sign him a deal like this. I think this is a pretty good value for Dejounte Murray.
It's good value for sure. I think a lot of people didn't expect him to take it, which always tells you it's a win for the team.
I did not.
Yeah, and so this is the most they could offer him because of the extension rules. And I'm skeptical of him as a player. I'm skeptical of him as a fit next to Trae, but I appreciate a player who now twice has had a comfortable environment and taken a value contract for the team to, just take the money and continue to be somewhere that they're comfortable. And so that gives me optimism if he's willingly choosing to not enter free agency next year, that he believes in what Quin Snyder and Trae Young can kind of do with him, like it at least means he's not unhappy, I would assume. So that gives me some optimism because we did only see it with Quin for a few weeks basically. But I mean, this is a dude who had a 0.0 defensive box plus minus last year and a negative 0.4 defensive estimated plus minus from dunks and threes. He has that long wingspan and everything, but I don't think of him as a game-breaking defender. And he's been
No, he's not.
And he's been pretty below average efficiency-wise his whole career as a scorer. So, to me, the Trae Dejounte pairing has a lot to prove in year 2. Like, I think that's just pretty undeniable. And, like, this past year, he had the highest three-point rate of his career, but only shot 34%. Only 32% on catch and shoot. Only 38% on wide-open threes. And I remember a lot of hype from Atlanta at the beginning of last season that they were kind of playing off each other in creative ways, and then it feels like it just evolved into Trae ball by the end, and your turn, my turn stuff. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see if Quin Snyder can do what he did for various players throughout his time in Utah for these two guys, because it doesn't feel like their natural predisposition is to play Quin ball.
No, I mean, Trae specifically, and I still don't think we know what the right perfect fit with Trae is based on how he's played up to date, and it's going to be I think it's on Quin to coax that out of him, I think is the tricky part. There's reporting out there that would tell you, well, let me restart that. There's enough out there that makes me think that Quin Snyder has a pretty good say in what the organization is doing. Mm-hmm. That's probably partly why he has this job, and he didn't wait for a team in the offseason to go get him or for the Spurs job, right? He feels like someone that if he could push Trae out of his comfort zone, he could make Trae just the best version of himself. He is the kind of coach that with his principles, with what he did with Donovan Mitchell, with what he did for other guys in Utah, that I think he could really bring the best out of Trae if Trae is willing to acquiesce to some of what Quin does. And I think the same applies for Dejounte. Both those guys definitely have some things that aren't exactly inclined for Quin, but that would also assume, Brendon, that you're getting the earlier Utah Quin and not later Quin that was so pick and roll heavy. So like what Quin Snyder we get, I think plays a part in all of this in my mind as well.
Well, so on that note, I mean, I just think Dejounte has to shoot better to fit with anybody because he's not good enough as a pick and roll, have the ball in my hands every possession guy.
Well, and you have Trae, so like you have Trae, so he's not going to do that. Like there's no world where he's going to get to do that stuff.
Sure, I mean, I guess there is a world where he's like better at it than Trae, but we know that's not the reality, right? So it's like you have to be able to shoot. So that's a question. I looked at the numbers. Last year, Trae had 3.5 ISOs per game, 12.7 pick and roll possessions per game. The year before, 3.5 ISOs per game, 14 pick and roll possessions per game. So basically the way that Trae was finishing possessions as an offensive player did not change much at all. Like one fewer pick and roll with Dejounte there. Not much of a change. And so I look at that. I know Quin was only there for a bit of it. It's more of a Dejounte thing than a Quin thing with those trends as far as what last season would have shown us. So I look at that, and I look at the fact that, to your point, I don't really feel like Quin did a great job of fighting against Donovan Mitchell's worst instincts as a scorer. And I think by the end of those two working together, Donovan had become like a less ideal version of himself as well. And part of that's because it was like old Mike Conley next to him. And like, it's always can't separate one thing from the other.
And they had Rudy Gobert, and you needed to maximize what Gobert was on offense. And how do you do that? It's when you run pick and roll with Gobert and let him dunk because he doesn't really have another offensive skill in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think there is a lot riding on this season. I think it's smart to just lock in the trade anyway. But this roster doesn't really feel better to me after an offseason. And I know that they cleared some cap, but that really wasn't clearing that cap space was not in order to like go out and spend on something else in the future. It was mostly just to pay the guys they already have. They could maybe trade Capella or Bogdanovich or something, but I think this is kind of their team. So it's going to have to be on those two just getting better.
Yeah, notably on Dejounte last year, 34% from three, 33% the year before, 32% the year before. The thing that really buoyed him last year on a year where he shot 31% on non-corner threes was a 44% mark on corner threes. Not a huge chunk, of his offense is the three-point shooting. 28% of his shots last year was a career high. 7% from the corner was a career high, but those are still really, really low numbers for a guy at his spot. Those are insanely low numbers for someone that plays the position he does in this NBA. Let's run through their depth chart. Trae Young, Patty Mills, Dejounte Murray.
Patty Mills is a Hawk for now. He's been on like 4 teams this week.
Get that jersey. I would. Patty Mills. Hawks really are just like the king franchise of like. Guy got traded here and like kind of exists for this team. Rashid, like there's Carmelo, a ton of them. Dwight. Well, Dwight actually like played.
He
a game.
did play.
I just mean
he
the
did
guy.
Play. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the year they had those like neon. Those jerseys were awful. Not good. A lot of bad jerseys recent years. That's a whole other thing. Trae Young, Patty Mills for now. Dejounte Murray, AJ Griffin, who I like. I like him as a prospect. Showed some stuff last year. DeAndre Hunter, Bogdanovich. Sadiq Bey, who they traded for, and assuming they'll pay him at some point. Jalen Johnson at power forward, and then Clink, who I also like, but also he's coming up for a contract soon as well.
Yep,
got to kind of figure that out. And then Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu, who I think every basketball nerd you read and watch their podcast or listen to their podcast or whatever loves Onyeka Okongwu, and to me you would assume he's gonna subsume the starting spot from Capella at some point via a trade of
and he's extension eligible right now.
Yeah, and I wonder how you handle that, and you should pay him to keep him. He's really good. You mentioned, Brendon, you're not sure if they're better. So I want to ask it in this way. They were a play-in team last year. Remember, they beat the Miami Heat in the play-in tournament.
Yes.
But, didn't do what the Heat did.
They also stole 2 games from Boston, which should have told us something about Boston, I think.
Yeah, in retrospect, probably. But is this team with Quin Snyder for an offseason and a training camp, which I do think matters, considering how little teams do get to practice, with Bay for a training camp, with the other moves they made, just kind of where their roster is at, some of the young guys getting another year under their belts. Can they go from play-in level to a top 6? Is there a world where this team is better than either Cleveland or New York?
I could see them being better than the Knicks. I could also see them being, if you're talking about injuries, Cleveland is thinner. So, an injury, one of their main guys, maybe that's enough. I think Atlanta's deep, which is a benefit, of all of that. And some of it's young guys, but playable young guys. To me, look, Atlanta's offense last year was 9th. Would it be shocking to you if I told you they were in the top 3 this upcoming season?
No, Quinn. I mean, look, we there are some questions about what Snyder's like philosophy will be. I think that he always coaches offenses that whip. His offenses are productive and efficient and really really annoying to play against.
Yeah, so I mean that could be enough, right? If they're just a top 3 offense and they were a bottom 10 defense, but that's probably going to happen again, especially getting younger. I mean, Sadiq Bey is their starting 4. That used to be John Collins, who I think is actually like a decent defender, at least as a rim protector. So, yeah, I mean, 21st in defense. Let's just try to keep it there. I don't know about improvement, but like let's keep it 21st and then get a top 3 offense, and maybe that's enough. I mean, I think that there is a clear ceiling on this team, but I could see them at least improving on last year.
Where I think they could make some noise, and at least the way it could happen is they're getting to top 3 in offense, like you said, Brendon. So last year they're at 116.3 per cleaning the glass. That was a 1 point, like basically a point better than league average. Top 3 is up at like 118. It's like 3 points better than league average. If they get up there, that's where I think they could get competitive. The East also, I curious to see what the East does look like. Are the Nets?
Yeah.
Are the Nets a 45-win team again? I don't think so. Are the Heat? Do the Heat get Dame? That will matter in this. What are the Raptors? What are the Bulls? Philly? Are the Pacers just someone we're looking at as frisky on paper, but aren't ready to take that leap yet? Is that still a winnable team? The Wizards will be bad again. The Hornets will be bad again. I think the Pistons might be more annoying to play and more competitive night to night, but I still think they're going to be pretty bad. There are lots of winnable games they will get. But is it enough to springboard? It's okay. Bucks, Celtics, 76ers, if they can kind of somewhat run it back. Cleveland, the Knicks, and the Heat would be like the teams in some order that I would put as my favorites to be in the top 6 for next year. Atlanta could be like 7 again, but be better. That doesn't feel like an unrealistic thing to say. But they could win like 43 games and be 7th, and I would be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, New York had the second best offense in the NBA last year. And that just feels unsustainable to me. And they were sneaky bad on defense overall. So they're the one I would think could fall. But Miami is going to rise. So, yeah, I mean.
Yeah,
I would even think if Miami didn't get Dame at this point, with their lack of depth and losing Strus and Vincent, it could get a little weird. But I think everyone knows they're going to get him. So I'm factoring that in. But, yeah.
But I mean, what if it costs Bam? What if it costs Bam though, Brendon?
I don't think it's going to. What if it costs Jovic? I mean, Summer League All-Star. Really, he should have been on my too good team.
Yeah, big. I look again. They're gonna pluck someone out of obscurity, and it's gonna be the guy. Yeah, sure.
Orlando Robinson, the dude he scored like 40 points the other night. Their center. He shot threes. He's blocking shots. Like that might be the dude. Maybe that's who Portland can get now that they've seen him.
Yeah. Atlanta's in a weird spot. I don't envy some of they're in the spot too financially where they've done a good job of drafting competent players, but then you have to pay them, and that when you have some of these other big contracts, that gets really cumbersome. I do what, and you're yeah. I mean, they made these trades, and then they they did other trades with Ty Washington and other guys you theoretically could have developed to shed salary, and I kind of get that because you kind of already are deep and have enough guys, but at the same time you just did the shed money. I do wonder if I don't know what his value would be necessarily. Center's kind of a hard value thing to gauge, and I think if a team was going to try to blow away a team for a competent sub all-star level starting center, they might try to call Cleveland first and blow them away for Jared Allen versus calling for Clint Capella because he's older and do a contract sooner. But I do wonder if there's a Capella trade they pursue to kind of give Okongwu the starting lineup. Maybe he's consolidated with one of those forwards. Maybe it's Bogdanovich because he's older and has had real injury issues. And if he gets hurt again, that I feel worse about this team for sure.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a trade they try to make to kind of consolidate some of these other pieces and get someone. I don't know who that would be. I don't know.
They're reportedly looking for a Siakam deal. And that's kind of still lingering there. But I don't really know if I like that, to be honest with you.
I do, but that's it's a talent. It's a real talent bet. And it's a weird – Siakam would be an interesting fit with Quin Snyder. I don't think – we have not seen a player like that play in a Quin Snyder system. Is there – there was no one on –
No.
Like, what's the closest comp you had of someone that
the
played
person
with,
that I
like,
thought
from
of was Gordon Hayward, but the fact that Siakam kind of exists in, like, he wants to be at the elbow or the extended post. Like, I think he plays somewhat of a similar style to, it's not perfect, but that's probably the closest of like a playmaking forward. But like Derek Favors is not exactly.
Yeah, it'd be
Pascal
like Hayward, or like if Joe Ingles was like doing way more stuff and was like also a defensive monster.
It's honestly probably like Horford in the Hawks days. When Quin was an assistant under Bud, it would probably be more like the Millsap Horford stuff back then, but we don't know how much of that was Quin Snyder. So yeah, I mean, I don't. It's a weird fit, but it is a talent play. It's just funny to me that one of the cheaper teams in the league would go for 3 like close to max players as their way out of like salary cap issues. Is like, we don't want to extend our young guys. Instead, what we'd like to do is give 30-year-old Pascal Siakam like $45 million. All right.
Would trade Dejounte and Siakam as a core, and let's say like they keep a couple other young guys and whatnot, is that enough to push them into the top 6 for you?
Probably would be enough to push them into the top 6. Maybe they're better than, like, they're definitely better than Brooklyn at that point. Probably pretty close to being a lock to be better than New York. We don't know about Philadelphia. I could maybe see that, but they're in a weird spot. They made this bed for themselves when they traded for Dejounte Murray, and we always knew it was going to be an imperfect fit. I think the owner did that, and they gave up a lot of picks. So there they are.